The next chapter is described as being back to Browns. By that I mean back to Browns, Nutria, and it was in probably 1977, 78, somewhere around there. 79, 79, 79. After my adventures in the Rhodesian military, I found myself in a unique, or shall I rather say peculiar situation, because I had no more military duties to do, and there was no military record of me. Yes, correct. No military record of me. I so all of a sudden I found myself like a stranger because all my links to a uniform were severed. I wrote a letter to the South African headquarters, military headquarters, and trying to find out what was going on, and they didn't know who I was. And well, I told them that I have been actively on duty for the last number of years and doing so many camps in Zimbabwe, excuse me, Rhodesia, doing so many camps in Rhodesia. But the only record that they had of me was they did not even they did not they had a file on me, but they didn't even have a driver's license for me, let alone what I have done and what my rank was. And so I said to them, no, I wanted to get involved again. So they sent me or made an appointment for me to go and see a excellent unit, citizen force unit called 2 Regiment Northern Transvaal. I went to see them one particular Tuesday because the officers always met the first Tuesday of the month to do admin at the unit headquarters in Voortrekkerhoogte. And I reported there, and the unit commander, Commandant Fourie, was a excellent military officer. I really enjoyed him. But, I just have to correct myself. They had no further record of me, not even my driver's license. So the only proof that I had about me having done my military service in Zimbabwe, I keep on saying Zimbabwe, my only record that I had of only proof that I had of me doing service in Rhodesia was my Rhodesian dog tags and believe it or not, all the photos that I took there, albeit illegally. And I told the South African Defence Force that I will show them the photos of me being there and my escapades there if that means I have to show them proof of photos having taken those photos illegally. But nonetheless, they on this one particular Tuesday night, I could see the officers, were listening to my story. They just shook their head and they must have been thinking, yeah, typical damn army. Anyhow, a brand new file was created for me, and I was given the rank of a cadet officer, a candidate officer. That was even lower than a corporal or rank of corporal, which I had in Rhodesia. Now, all of a sudden, going back to Browns, Nutria colored, same color uniforms as the Israeli army, maybe just a coincidence, being used to the Rhodesian camo, the brushstroke camo, which was a lovely uniform, at least compared to the Nutria Browns. Oh my God, that was so dull. But I guess I had no choice. There we were. Of course, there was they had to take a new photo of me. A new photographic record was established, and I was reported to go to the quartermaster and issued all my dull browns. And before I knew it, I was back in the South African Citizen Force. Albeit, as I say, at a lower rank. Anyhow, I was assigned as platoon commander of Platoon 3 in Charlie Company, meaning that I had to report once Saturday a month for what they call tactical training with our troops, and as well as which entailed, giving orders of what you would do in a situation, a military situation, and how to take care of it with a platoon at your disposal. And the whole idea of that was just keeping the officers and platoon commanders on tip on keeping them sharp, and of course also serving as evaluation and pointing out where you may have made a mistake with your orders or not considered this or not considered that. But that was what it was. Now, for those that don't know what a platoon in South African terms entails, it is a unit of 40 men. A platoon commander, the lieutenant, a platoon sergeant, and 4 sections consisting of 8 men each, which includes section leader and a section 2IC for each section, second in command, 2IC. 40 men in total. Did I say 30? No, a section is 40 men, yeah. Let me repeat that in case I made a mistake, okay? A platoon consists of 40 men. Yes, it is 40 men. But a platoon commander, which is a lieutenant, platoon sergeant, and 4 sections, 10 troops each, including a section leader and a section 2IC, section 2IC being second in command. Now, as I say, every Saturday, every first Tuesday of the month was allocated to admin at the unit, because in those days there weren't computers. So if troops mailed in a change of address or whatever the case may be, his file had to update it, and that had to be done manually at the unit headquarters. And that's about it as far as Back to Browns is concerned. But within a couple of months, after having joined 2 Regiment Northern Transvaal as a volunteer, myself and 2 other colleagues, Willem Jansson and Match Ribbons, maybe I should not even name names.
Can I ask you a question? You were married at this time, is that correct?
Yeah.
And what was Tia doing? And how did she feel about you resigning up?
I don't know.
Was she teaching then?
Hmm?
Was she teaching then?
No, she was working at the University of South Africa.
And did she feel good about you resigning up? Or did you have a
No, she had no particular feelings, pro or con. No. But anyhow, here we were, and we sent on a platoon commander's course, officer's course, in Oudtshoorn at the School of Infantry, Oudtshoorn Infantry, South African Infantry School. Now, it was a very rigorous course, and the last part of the course was was a route march back over the Black Mountains, the Swartberge, back to camp. It is, to say the least, one hell of a walk which would normally take something like 3 or 4 days. I can't remember exactly. We faced a cut-off time to be back at the camp on a certain time, certain date. But I did not particularly like the idea of climbing over those mountains. It's not walking over those mountains, it's climbing over those mountains. And so we decided, no, we'll make a plan. We'll make a plan. Of course, everybody, taking initiative was also part of the course. Well, and as I say, the whole exercise with a full kit over those mountains, nada, nada. You had to carry your own water, food, kit.
How much
Those,
did that weigh?
hmm,
And how much did that weigh?
about 80 pounds, 85 pounds. But no. Those down mountains were a long way off and they were damn high, and I didn't. And me, Match, and Willem, we said, no, we're going to make a plan. Well, I heard in the grapevine that some of the guys had some family members in Oudtshoorn who would meet them at a certain place and hide them in town for 2, 3 days or whatever, and then the guys would march up to the camp and some in the middle of the night, making it, home back to camp in time before the cutoff date. But we didn't have the luxury of knowing anybody in camp. But another plan presented itself. We noticed a tractor in an alfalfa field, parked with a nose downhill. And that only meant one thing: the tractor starter did not work, or the battery did not work. One of the two. But parked downhill, it meant it's a diesel tractor. We could start it by pushing it and releasing the clutch. In second or third gear, it'll start. And we decided to borrow it from the farmer. And then when darkness set in, we borrowed it and used some back roads and whatever, worked our way and parked it some way not too far from town, and snuck back into the hills and whatever, and spent our time for 2 or 3 days in the hills and made it back to camp just before cutoff time. Well, with us having borrowed the tractor and leaving it in some back roads, etc., etc., we never heard about it again. No, nothing. No, there was no formal investigation, as far as we know, at least. Well, within a couple of months, we received our first PIP. PIP meaning, the star on your shoulder for as being a sub-lieutenant. We did another 2 camps or so, and then we received our second PIP, and that made us full lieutenants. Now, 1 year, that was after we received our second PIP, we were doing a camp on the Rhodesian border between South Africa and Rhodesia. And those days it was already Zimbabwe, Rhodesia-Zimbabwe border. And the unit itself was based at Madimbu, but our company was based at a substation at a place called Mabalikwe. Now, one evening, something, I can't remember exactly how it played out or turned out to be the case, but I heard a hell of a commotion going on and screaming and yelling. And what materialized was one troop, he just had his brain clutch out and he was pointing his rifle at somebody with whom he had a disagreement with, and he was threatening to shoot the other guy. Now, remember, we were doing border duty, so we were issued with live ammo, full first line ammunition, meaning all the required ammo that you can carry in your ammo packs or your ammo. What is it to call it? Magazine pouches. Now the troop was not 10 feet away from the other troop that he threatened to shoot, and now what the problem was, and here I was facing a very serious situation, and I had no psychological training. I mean, how must I now defuse this ultra critical situation? And luckily, something happened in the background, some noise or whatever, and this distracted the guy who was threatening to shoot the one troop. And when that distracted the guy for a second, two other troops jumped the guy holding the rifle who was threatening to shoot. His guy who was pointing the rifle at, and they overpowered him. And so, yep, he was disarmed. And I immediately contacted the HQ, told them the situation, that we had a serious problem on hand, and I needed this troop to be evacuated, and I needed military police ASAP.
HQ stands for?
Hmm?
HQ stands for?
Headquarters. And within 10 minutes, a chopper showed up, and with two military policemen, and the guy was taken to military detention barracks. One thing that I learned, throughout life, is that, or maybe even more so in my military years, is that everybody appreciates being treated fair and kind. There's a big difference between unfair and unkind, or strict yet unfair. You can be strict, but you can be fair. Every person in life, any person in life appreciates being treated with respect. And the same goes for military life as well. And as I say, being strict does not entail being unfair. To the contrary, nothing can be further from the truth. And as I say, that is so much more important in a military situation. Take care of your troops, and they will take care of you. It was about 2 weeks after this particular camp, I got a call from Ari Botha, one of my section leaders, and wanted to know if we were available for dinner on such and such a Friday night. And I said, yes, as far as I know. I've got nothing going on. If there's a problem, I'll let him know. So, what time do you want to meet? Okay, let's meet at 7:00 at the Culemborg Hotel. Now, Culemborg was a very nice hotel, had a very nice lounge and private bar and etc. etc. So, very happy to meet Ari there. When came that Friday, of course, when I got there, when my wife and when Tia and I got there, Ari and his wife were already seated, so we joined them and had a drink, maybe had a second drink. After which Ari said, okay, well, why don't we move over to where he made a reservation for us to go and have dinner. He led the way, and as we got to the door, the dining room or he opened the door for Tia, and she walked in. And as she walked in, I followed her, and she froze for a second, and so did I. Then I only realized what was going on. And there was my whole platoon. All of them. 40 men with their wives, of course, 38 without me and Tia. All of my troops with their wives sitting there. Now, that's probably one of the biggest compliments I've ever been given in my life. And of course, there I was, and we were seated, etc., etc. And at one stage, I asked my platoon sergeant if it was okay if I propose a toast. Of course, he granted permission without a problem. I stood up, and I did so, albeit with a pretty good lump in my throat and very, very blurry vision. And that is the evening that brought an end to my military career in Browns and in my military service in South Africa.
I'm wondering, what was Tia's reaction to that honor that you received?
I spoke to her many years after that, if she can remember it. And she could. And strange enough, she told me that she was very proud. She felt very proud. Although I must say, no, I'm not going to say anything else.
But she didn't really know too much about your military endeavor.
That's what I was going to say. She did not know very much about where I did what kind of military service or border duty and when. I mean, some of my camps I did in Rhodesia, and she did not even know that.
Because you weren't allowed to say that, right?
I didn't even tell her that, but like some of my camps, I was already married, and she didn't know that I participated in camps in a neighboring country.
When you talk about the importance of showing appreciation and respect to people and fairness, would you say that is a lesson you got from your father?
To a certain extent, yes, but that is also, there's a term that refers to an officer when an officer is being called, or a person is being called an officer and a gentleman. Now, there are certain rules that you adhere to with your troops. You take care of them and they will take care of you. For example, when it comes to a food line, you just don't pull rank and go and get food first just because you're senior and you can get or be served first. No. You wait for your troops to go and be fed before you get fed. And if there's no food left by the time you get in line to go and eat, so be it. At least your troops are fed. That kind of thing. You stand back and to see that they are taken care of first. It's this, besides the officer and a gentleman adage, it's in an officer's course, you also
You earn their respect.
Yes, 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 but you are also taught what good manners entail.
Now, you've often said that that was some of the best years of your youth, being in service. Um, when you say in service, what would you say you were in service to?
I have said it was the best years of my youth, or, when I did my military service. Okay, well, first of all, I did not fight for the maintaining of apartheid. Not at all. Like in Rhodesia, I knew that it could, the Rhodesian government or the white government could not survive indefinitely. I knew that. They simply did not have the numbers. So after all the years in South Africa, in Rhodesia, I did not fight for preserving white rule. Not at all. I fought communism. I did not fight for Mugabe to be the eventual president. I fought and hoped that we would be able to work out what was referred to as an internal settlement. Both South Africa and in Rhodesia. The system that came about in South Africa, I did not fight for that as well. I voted yes for majority rule, but I did not vote for the damn corruption that is now overtaken that place. And the dirtiness, if I say dirtiness, I mean filth, lack of garbage collection, things like that. I did not vote yes for that.
How did you feel about Mandela?
I personally, in the beginning, remember Nelson Mandela was convicted of treason. So initially, in my early years, I thought, yeah, he was also a communist, and it was a good thing that he was convicted. And later on, during the years, as my political eyes opened, and I studied political science, and Mandela was still in court, I realized that the government that imprisoned him was a false government, if I can put it that way. They were not the legal rulers of the country. Because, no, why would we talk or treat black people as second class citizens? That's not how my thinking was. And I was very happy the day that Nelson Mandela was released.
Tell me about de Klerk and Mandela, about that, what happened there.
That's a really complicated situation to go into, and I don't think I can cover it here with the little bit of knowledge that I have.
I guess I'm asking more your take.
I think de Klerk is known as the person who toppled apartheid. He was the final president, white president of South Africa, and he ensured that apartheid would be no more. He released Nelson Mandela, and as a matter of fact, he and Nelson Mandela were good friends.
It says a lot.
Yes,
And
yes.
when Mandela was elected president, how did that feel to you? I mean, what was that day like to you?
There were wonderful emotions, but there was also mixed emotions because that was also seen as, on the one hand, a wonderful expectation fulfilled. On the other hand, okay, now it's time for the white resistance to pick up arms, and a lot of us thought there was going to be a bloody revolution in the country.
Well, and you were afraid of what the white resistance would do.
Yeah, there was some resistance. I mean, some people were shot. Some white right wingers did take up arms, but they were shot. But I expected a bigger.
So you were afraid of the turmoil that was going to happen because of the changeover in the government
Yes.
as a family, and as more violence occurred.
You know, yes, best is to read the book and see where I deal with it systematically or as the book progresses. But that's one of the reasons why we moved to America, because we feared that there will be progressively more bloodshed.
I think we hit on a lot of things today. Thank you.
Okay.